struggling to maintain a consistent yoga routine? Does it feel more like a start-stop rather than a flow? Every time you decide this time will be different, somehow, some way, life gets in the way. And I completely get it. As someone who's guided hundreds of students through this exact process of establishing a consistent Ashtanga Yoga practice, I've heard every reason under the sun for why consistency feels impossible. But what if I told you that lasting change doesn't require more discipline or willpower? In this video, I'm going to share with you 5 essential principles, ones that I haven't really shared before, that will help you make this habit actually stick in a way that works with your life, not against it. We'll look at the ancient wisdom behind lasting motivation and why that fleeting inspiration that you see on Instagram isn't enough. We're going to look at the 5 essential principles to build a consistent practice. These are very simple shifts that will transform the way that you practice. And finally, we'll look at what to do when life gets in the way and explore some of the common obstacles. But before that, let me introduce myself. If you're new here, I'm Sushmita, but you can call me Sushi. I grew up surrounded by yoga in India. I now live in South Africa. And on this channel, I help you master your mind through yoga poses using a clear step-by-step pathway that's rooted in the ancient Ashtanga Yoga tradition so that you can notice clear, tangible results in your body, mind, and overall well-being. So put me on full screen, this will be short, let's dive right in. In order to maintain a regular yoga practice, we've got to be motivated. And our motivation usually comes from something inspiring that we saw on Instagram. Maybe it's this chick doing an advanced pose and we think, oh wow, I want to do that. But this feeling, this inspired emotional high is not enough to actually sustain a yoga practice. It's fleeting, it's based on just this blind faith that if they can do it, I can do it. And it's almost like an infatuated state. It's not a real way to stay motivated in the long term. According to the Vedantic theory of motivation, there are 2 key elements of staying motivated. And the first is Anubhava or experience. The best kind of motivation is direct experience. If you've experienced a good yoga class, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's that no matter how much you talk about the benefits of individual poses or you hear about like how someone else has done it and has changed their lives, there's nothing that beats direct experience. So the way in which it's taught should give you a direct experience of the benefits of yoga very early on in order for you to stay motivated and keep going until you see real progress and results in the rest of your life. And the second key component is to develop Shraddha. Shraddha is translated as continuous faith. In order to develop Shraddha, we need to view that style of yoga as a pramanam. A pramanam is an authoritative and reliable source of knowledge, and it doesn't come from just watching inspirational videos on Instagram. It's a deep, sustained faith that comes through engaging with it consistently, and through engaging with it consistently, we slowly realize what we're faithful towards. So we don't start off with blind faith and just believe, okay, if I do this, it'll definitely get me, levitating in lotus pose. It's just to figure out what we're faithful towards by engaging in the action itself and continuously working with the quality of Shraddha to cultivate that quality of Shraddha and discover what we're faithful towards. But for doing that, we need to accept that yoga as pramanam, as real, as time-tested, not as something that we just, kind of disbelieve, and that doubt in itself will create an obstacle in our practice. So the 2 key elements of having motivation are Anubhava, which is direct experience, and Shraddha, which is continuous faith. After years of practicing on my own at home, I can tell you this with full confidence, I still find the self-discipline aspect extremely challenging. I rely on my teachers, I use my community, my self-practice circles inside my community, and also just a single mantra or a chant in the background to help me focus and to help me just take a mindful moment to acknowledge that I need help, I need support, I need to be able to have enough motivation to complete the practice, and just to acknowledge that it's not all on me. If you notice in the opening mantra or any chant, we chant Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi, and those last 3 Shantis address the 3 obstacles. The inner obstacles, which are like self-doubt, just frustration with yourself and giving up too early, or the mind's tendency to wander and check the phone and do other things. All of these inner obstacles to kind of prevent and protect these obstacles from derailing you from practicing. And then the second is your outer obstacles, the obstacles in your environment, like your family, your toddler, the doorbell, any interruptions that might take you away from the thing that you've chosen to do, time constraints, or even like your responsibilities. So these are all your environmental obstacles that can prevent you from having a complete, well-rounded practice. And finally, it's the cosmic obstacles. These are the unseen factors that lie beyond our understanding or control, that have a play, and we acknowledge these three things as definitive ways in which we can get derailed off the mat. So we pay our homage to them, we honor them, and we don't let them trouble us as we practice. So this is honestly a really nice way to cultivate real commitment to protect the mind using the mantra. So it's not just this like fragile kind of commitment that breaks at the first obstacle. So remember that the chant is not just anything that's religious, it's actually just to protect the mind and to let you just slip into the practice without these obstacles pulling you away from the practice. For any outcome from our practice, there are two main components. There's the prayatna, which is what's in our control, and then there's the adrishta, the factors that are unseen, the external factors that we can't really control. The prayatna is the consistency that you bring, the discipline you maintain, and all the effort that you put into the poses. And this is what's in your control. But then there's the adrishta factor, the unseen external factors that are outside of your control, like your body's composition, the way that it can't really fold into Padmasana is just the function of your hips. Maybe it's your life circumstances, where you are, how late in your life you chose to take up the practice, or just the timing of the progress that you're making on the mat. And while we can control the prayatna, while we can show discipline and consistency, we can't really control this other adrishta factor. And so when we chant, when we set the right intention and take a mindful moment before the practice, we're trying to acknowledge and stack the odds in our favor so that those external factors don't get in the way. And when we do this, whenever the mind wanders on the mat, we then bring it back to this singular intention. We bring it back to the chant. And by doing this, even that gentle reminder protects the mind and allows it to just focus on what's in the mind's control. Even with the right motivation, we still need to have practical systems so that we're practicing consistently and sustainably in real life. So here are the 5 essential principles. The first is to only work to 75% of your capacity. Sustainability is key. Think of whether you can do the same practice 60 years down the line. Avoid pushing too hard or reaching too far, because when you finish your practice, you should feel energized, not depleted and drained and sore that you need a massage every time. So really think of sustainability and work within your limit, and don't push to 100% every time. If you've reached your 75% capacity, stop, hold yourself back, because you're going to come back to it tomorrow, and the consistency itself will make sure that you're pushing. And second, we need to be able to create a distraction-free environment. And this means we put our phone away. Whenever I'm practicing, my phone stays on charge in another room, free of any distractions, and I'm communicating to my family, my friends, my team that I should not be disturbed for these 2 hours. And this kind of setting the boundary exercise is so important, because otherwise it's going to be really hard to stay focused and just keep practicing. And the ability to maintain your focus and place your mind in a single point is what we're training during the practice. So if we're allowing distractions, if we're allowing our mind to be taken away in many different directions, then it's not the best thing. So if you need to print out a sequence chart and keep it next to you so you don't need to check your phone, that is much more preferable than constantly looking at your phone for what's coming next. If you're using audio, make sure that you put your phone far enough away that you don't go on WhatsApp and see what messages are flooding in the morning. Number 3 is to master your diet. Just remember that your body has limited capacity. So if it's spending all of its energy digesting that Domino's pizza you had last night, then it has very little left to actually dedicate to the practice. So try and practice on an empty stomach. Experiment with earlier dinners, lighter dinners, so that when you wake up in the morning, you don't feel hungry as yet, but you're still like kind of empty stomach, light body, so you don't feel heavy in the shapes. Number 3 is to prioritize sleep. Instead of forcing yourself to wake up at 4 a.m. every single time, just allow your body to naturally wake up with 8 hours of sleep. So focus on your bedtime rather than your wake up time. So work backwards and say, if you went to sleep at a certain time, then literally you need 8 hours of sleep. So you won't be able to wake up that early the next morning. So give yourself enough time and enough space to actually have those 8 hours of sleep. And finally, it's to manage emotional drama. I know that's easier said than done, but the most consistent practitioners aren't the ones that are super happy and always upbeat. They're the ones that are kind of emotionally stable. And just to note, whenever you have a period of emotional instability and mental disturbance, it just makes regular practice difficult. So check your relationships, check your environment, and notice how emotional turbulence is affecting your practice. It's also true that a consistent practice can reduce the emotional turbulence in your life, but if it's too emotionally turbulent, it's just hard to even step on the mat. And I've experienced this myself, and I'm sure you have. But just to see, when your practice falters, what is it in your life? Examine all of those relationships, examine what's going on, and see what the real cause is. Address that with therapy, with writing, with other modalities. And then notice if you change that, if you'd make steps in those areas, how your consistency in your practice actually improves. But knowing these principles is just the beginning. The real challenge comes when we try to apply it to our day-to-day lives, and it may seem on the surface that we're just inconsistent with our yoga practice, but our common excuses often mask something much deeper. Let's address the most common obstacles head on. The first one is I don't have the time. And I've heard this dozens of times over the years, and I always say, if you've got 10 hours to work, it's much better that you spend 9 hours working and 1 hour doing yoga than 10 hours working and have no yoga. Because yoga is one of those things that doesn't just take away energy, it also gives you energy through improved focus, giving you vitality, clarity of mind, and so on. So when you shift from seeing yoga as just one more thing to do on the to-do list, it becomes like a foundation for everything else in your life to be possible. And this is when finding the motivation to practice becomes easy, becomes effortless. The other excuse I often hear is I can't wake up early enough to practice. I used to believe that waking up at 4 a.m. was the only legitimate way to practice Ashtanga Yoga, but after years of waking up super early and burning out and feeling tired by 11 a.m., I realized that there's an innate body's wisdom. And if I need 8 hours of sleep, it means I should be sleeping way earlier. And sometimes your life doesn't allow you to sleep that early. So instead of setting a deadline for when you should wake up, try and shift your sleep time. When you shift your sleep time, then your wake up time takes care of itself, because the body will know when it can wake up naturally without having that cortisol strike from waking up from an alarm. So just remember to respect your body's natural rhythm. If it means practicing in the evening, that's okay. A consistent evening practice is better than a once-off sporadic morning practice. And the other common excuse I hear is my home is just way too chaotic for me to practice, and I completely get it. If the doorbell is ringing, your toddler is interrupting you, and you've got so many things to do, it can be extremely hard to find the stillness to practice. But I suggest you just start off with walling off a small corner of your house and allowing that to be your practice space. So when you go in there, it's almost like making it clear that for 30 minutes, you will have uninterrupted time to just practice. So if you have a young child, and making sure someone's caring for your child, if you've got obligations, just 30 minutes, wall it off and make sure that you're able to close the door on a room where you can just literally go in and do your practice. Creating those boundaries and setting those boundaries can be hard initially, but if you want to sustain a home practice, you've got to create those spaces and places where you can go within. And remember, your practice then will become like this root, this anchor, so that you can give back to your obligations, to your work, to your family, to everything else that you've got to do. The journey to a consistent practice isn't about forcing yourself to be on the mat every day. It's about creating the right conditions so that your practice naturally flourishes. In this video, we talked about finding your true motivation. We looked at the 5 key principles to maintain a consistent practice, and we also looked at the objections and common obstacles that come up when we try to practice. And honestly, addressing these will help maintain a practice that's sustainable for a lifetime. If you enjoy these insights, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit the like button, and leave a comment down below. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one.